Hi, it's Wayne O'Keefe from howtofish.com.au, and I'm going to talk to you about what I think is probably one of the most underrated baits of all time, and that is bread. Simple white bread. It catches so many varieties of fish. In fact, it's quite surprising just how many varieties of fish will take this stuff, especially ones you don't think will take bread. Like, you know, bread is made from grain, so you think it's something that a vegetarian would eat. But no, the varieties caught on bread is almost listless. And when I say listless, the list is big. So types of predatory fish caught on it that, in my own experience, Murray cod, trevally, things like brim and snapper being caught on bread, redfin on bread, trout on bread, flathead on bread, and the list goes on. But it just by itself doesn't always have the attraction. So what I want to do is just go through one, and that's how to present it on the hook so that it's most effective, and then two, some of the flavorings that you can use. And I've got to tell you, there is a huge range of flavorings that you can use for bread, and this is only a small list of the items that I currently use. So let's just start on how you put it on the hook. So when you're using your bread, the best thing to do is buy the cheapest stuff you can get. Cheap white bread. Don't get wholemeal bread. Wholemeal has got more grain in it, more husk in it, and what happens is it doesn't mold quite as well. What you want is bread that is, the fresher the better. Bread that when you take it out, you can mold almost the same as you can mold a dough, and then it becomes into round balls like that stay on the hook very well. So what you want to be able to do is you just take a piece out like that, pull a piece out, a nice fresh piece out from the center, and that you can roll into a ball. Okay, now not everything is going to be presented as a ball. So what you do, just take out your slice of white bread, and the first way we'll do it is molding it into a ball or a teardrop shape, if you like. You just pull a piece out of the center and then you roll that up, okay? And when it's nice and fresh, it is just like molding dough. So what you want to be able to do is all you're going to do is mold it round your hook. Okay. When you mold it round the hook, the best thing to do is always leave the point showing. Okay, leave the point of the hook showing. That way, at least the flesh or the mouth, the meaty part of the fish can make contact with that when it bites it. If you have it completely covered, sometimes in cold water this can go a little bit hard, and when the fish bites it, it won't actually grab the skin of the mouth, and therefore it won't make contact. You won't hook that fish. But that's the simplest way of putting dough on, or putting your bread on, and then you can mold it into a teardrop shape if you like, just so that it sort of hangs like that. Now that's the very simplest way of putting it on. The next thing you can do is, to make everything more presentable, is to add flavors. Now this is really important. You only need a drop of whatever flavor you're using, a couple of drops. If I'm fishing for something like trout or carp in fresh water, and you never know what will pick up on this, I just basically might use strawberry. Trout in particular like the strawberry flavor, so I'll just use that. So strawberry essence you can get from the cake section of your supermarket. That works really well. Sometimes I use tuna oil if I'm in saltwater fishing or an estuary. Some drops of tuna oil really make the difference on that. Just a couple of drops on there is going to give off a flavor. You can just apply a bit of garlic powder to your bread and then knead it in, so mold that in so that the garlic is all the way through. You can also use things like, if you're after carp for instance, you can just open a can of corn, and I know that people fish with use corn. I use corn when I'm fishing for carp. The juice in here also is a great flavor for your bread. And then you can do things like you can use tuna, stuff that you get at the supermarket, to mold in with larger pieces of bread so that you've got some of that in there with that bread to give off that tuna flavor, and also have a little bit of the actual pieces of tuna in there. So that adds extra attraction to the bait. Now that works. You can catch an absolute abundance of fish using this technique. And then you can also experiment with different types of flavors. I've used a fish sauce in the past on these, something a bit unique to catch fish, and it really is surprising what you can get. Okay. Now, another way of applying bread, and sometimes this makes a difference. If you're not catching when you roll it into a ball like that, sometimes it's too stiff, doesn't appeal to the fish. The other way of doing it is taking your hook and bread, and what you do is you pinch the base of the bread onto the base of the hook. You mold that on, so that's nice and tight, but you leave the top feathery and untouched. Now that becomes much more palatable, and it's surprising the number of fish that will take that when they won't take the bread when it's rolled into a dough or when it's sort of molded all over the hook. The other great thing about this is there's a little bit of weight attached to that, as in the bread has weight. You can cast this out and just free line it. And I've found, especially when fishing on a pier or from a jetty, a dock in freshwater or saltwater, just casting that into the water and letting it drop at its own natural rate in the water can hit fish all the way down. So that unweighted can be very, very effective. I mean, if you have to cast at distances, you have to put a sinker on there as well. So, apply your sinker as you normally would, but unweighted bread sometimes has a fantastic attraction. And then just casting out and feeding out line. If you're fishing into a river, you can just cast out and then let the line spool off until you get to a point that you want to stop. That can be very, very effective. So this really is worth trying. Add any of the attractions, any of the ingredients, and it is amazing what you can get. And then finally, I was fishing in Shepparton in the Goulburn River, and there was a very successful angler there who was just mixing peanut butter, for instance, with the bread. He put a little bit of water on the bread first, and I'm talking about a couple of drops. Then he would knead in the peanut butter so that he had a peanut butter and bread mix, and then he molded it into, the standard teardrop shape. He put quite a bit on there, so he put on double the amount that I've got there, and that acted as a burley as it broke down over time, acted as its own burley with that flavour, and he was catching carp on that. So that's the other thing just to remember with bread. It will eventually break down and fall off the hook, so you need to be checking your bait, sort of every 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. But it is absolutely dynamite bait. It's so cheap, and it's something you can always have at home ready for when you go fishing. And I always usually have a couple of slices of this when I go fishing to complement the other baits that I have. It's well worth a shot. So if you've used bread before, just let me know how successful it's been, and with species you didn't expect to catch. I'd love to hear from anybody who's caught fish that they never expected to catch on bread. And look, if you've enjoyed the video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe.